Around both East Chapel Hill teams. We'll go ahead and do the coin toss, and since the team on my left, that is what I was instructed to do, we can call heads or tails. So I've been practicing really hard for this.
It shows.
And it is tails. So East Chapel Hill B, would you like to present or respond first?
We will respond first.
Okay, so judges, East Chapel Hill Team A will be Team 1 and present first, and East Chapel Hill Team B will be Team 2, and they'll be responding. Now if we can have both teams introduce themselves and then the judges as well. We'll start with Team 1.
Okay.
So we're East Chapel Hill A.
Hi, my name is Wintel Zane, and I'm a junior.
Hi, I'm Carla Traconis, and I'm a junior.
I'm James Crescent, and I'm a junior.
I'm Maggie Hassel, and I'm a junior.
My name is Kendall Chan and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Justine Kennedy and I'm a junior.
I'm Jessica Pay, I'm a senior.
I'm Salman Iftikhar, I'm a senior.
I'm Connor Mooney, I'm a sophomore.
And I'm Mary Michelle and I'm a senior.
And the judges, please.
I'm Josh Miller, and I'm a PhD candidate in political science here.
I'm Mary Wyndham. I'm a UNC philosophy PhD and also a lawyer.
And I'm Jeff Sayer McCord. I'm the director of the Philosophy, Politics, and Economics program here at UNC.
And I'm Colleen Cizek. I'm a junior political science and philosophy major at UNC, and I'm also on our college ethics school team here. We're happy to have you both. And Team 1, you will be responding to the question for case number 9, security versus privacy. Is it ethical for government employees to reveal classified information entrusted to them? Is it ethical for government employees to reveal classified information entrusted to them? Team 1, you'll now have 2 minutes to confer with each other, during which you're permitted to speak, and Team 2 may take notes during this time. Your 2 minutes begin now. Team 1 will now have 5 minutes to present an argument responding to the question, is it ethical for government employees to reveal classified information entrusted to them? Would you like time reminders at either 3 or 1 minute or both?
Verbal, please.
Okay, I'll give you verbal time reminders at 3 minutes and 1 minute. And your 5 minutes to present begin now.
All right, so thank you to the judges for being present, as well as to the other side of East Chapel Hill. As we look at case number 9, security versus privacy. So we were given the question, is it ethical for government employees to reveal classified information entrusted to them? And so we take it that, yes, it can be ethical in certain circumstances for government employees to reveal classified information. And so some of the points we're going to look at as we go through this case is what classified information entails. And then on the other side, what sort of areas is it ethical in for a person to reveal such classified information? And so the primary point we're going to look at is that if the government is somehow infringing upon the rights of its citizen and acting in a manner that does not uphold the general welfare of its citizens, that it's committing a gross atrocity in this sense, and we'll quantify this later on, that it would be ethical for this government employee, despite some of the duties they would seem to have at first, for them to reveal such classified information. And so, Carla is going to talk a little more about this.
Okay, so first off, we have to take into account that the duty of the government is to provide for the general welfare of the constituency that it's representing. And so because of this, if a government employee comes upon information or sees that this duty is not being upheld, then they are, in certain circumstances, justified to reveal this classified information. However, something that we do need to take into account when we look into this is the nature of the classified information and what exactly the consequences of revealing it would be. So in this case, we're given some certain examples. One of them that's very recent is Edward Snowden. The other one that's also recent is Mr. Manning, who
3
revealed
minutes
information.
remaining.
Thank you. So we have to realize that in the case of Manning, who revealed, among other informations, troop movements that would have put in gross, I guess, danger certain American troops and people who really weren't really involved in that case in the decision making, that would be not justified because we're basically furthering the harms that are coming from this decision. However, since Edward Snowden simply released information about the government, I guess, surveilling its citizens, it didn't put into direct harm any of those people. It just kind of made aware the possible infringement of rights that the government was taking upon, and then that was justifiable.
Another thing we'd want to look into is the way that this revealing of information is carried out. So one possibility is that the action or the information is being perpetrated by a small part of the government or even an individual in the government. And so if possible, the individual who is revealing the information should try to go through a channel that could productively fix the issue. If possible, especially if the information is classified for good reason, it could cause harm. But if they find that that the legal channels are not working appropriately, then they may be justified in revealing it to the public.
So one distinction that we could make in this case is the differences between revealing classified information that deals with the country internally versus dealing with classified information that concerns the country externally. And we're more inclined to say that it's ethical for government employees to reveal classified information internally, not taking into account something like releasing social security numbers, but going along the lines of the atrocities we laid out and rights being infringed upon. When this is an internal matter, this is where there needs to be a level of transparency and some whistleblowing. However, an external matter,
You have 1
for
minute
example, when Snowden revealed that we were spying on other countries, it's not clear that he had ethical grounds for making such a decision concerning U.S. foreign relations. That his concern as a citizen of the U.S. should be about protecting and making sure that the rights of U.S. citizens and their expectation to privacy is being upheld.
Right. So in conclusion, in answer to the question, is it ethical for government employees to reveal classified information entrusted to them? We answer that there are certain situations in which, yes, government employees can reveal classified information entrusted to them. However, it's under the classifications that we've provided that the government hasn't fulfilled their duty to, I guess, increase or maximize the societal welfare, and that the classified information is not increasing the harms, and that we make the distinction between internal classified information and external, that deals with external problems. That is why we uphold it. Thank you.
Thank you, Team 1, for your thoughtful presentation. Judges, you can score Team 1's presentation, and Team 2 will now have 1 minute to confer, during which they're permitted to speak, and Team 1 may take notes. Your minute begins now. Team 2, you now have 5 minutes to respond to Team 1's initial presentation regarding Case 9. Would you like time reminders at 3 minutes, 1 minute, or both?
Both, please. You do like verbal, like those.
Yes, I'll give you verbal time reminders at 3 minutes, 1 minute, and your 5 minutes to respond begin now.
So we'd like to thank our opponents for giving us this stance and for giving us the opportunity to critique it. And we'd like to thank the judges for being here as well. Starting off, one of the first criteria given is if rights are being, the government's grossly failing in its duties, whatever they may be. So the question really is, how do you go about determining this? If you have one whistleblower who's doing this, it basically has to be their decision. And if they go through the proper channels and people say, this isn't an issue, don't worry about it, and they're convinced in their minds this is the worst thing ever, and they go and leak this, is it ethical simply because they ardently believe that this is the case, even if a more objective person may say it's not? So we'd just like to see how we can make that maybe less subjective, or like an independent whistleblowing body that should, I don't know, evaluate claims like this. So yeah. Another point is, so people may not necessarily understand the context in which the information they have is being used. So if you don't necessarily understand, if you have one bit of information, it can mean a trillion different things depending on other bits of information that you may not have access to. And how should that be weighed in? If I go and I read something saying that somebody was shot, and I think, wow, we're assassinating people, and I go and leak that to the press, and it turns out it was in self-defense, or something like that, how would that be weighed in this? Like, how can we determine that the information that's being leaked is basically what people think it is? And if someone leaks information that isn't what they think it is, should that be a mitigating factor in punishment, or should foreign information.
So, our opponent stated that, there is no right to reveal international information. It's ethical only to reveal it internally, related to domestic issues. But we're wondering why this is and why,
3 minutes.
certain rights, thank you, certain rights being violated, only should be, addressed when it's an internal and domestic affair. Why should it not, or why shouldn't it, also be extended to international people? What if their, rights are also being infringed on, and what a person would do in that scenario?
Right, and expanding on that, so is it different, and this is really pertinent in the Snowden case, is it different for government employees and contractors for the government? And like, what are the ethical differences there? Because, as you know, Snowden was not like directly employed by the US, he was a contractor for, I believe, Booz Allen, but I don't really remember the exact name. Yeah, so is it different for contractors, like if a contractor is employed by multiple governments, which is pretty common, how should that be taken into account with whether it's ethical or not for them to leak information? So another issue potentially with revealing information, the suggestion was made that it be done through like the typical channels. So this is a really extreme example, and it may not apply as much in the US, or it may, I don't really know. But it's not at all atypical in some countries to kill potential whistleblowers. So how would the person's like desire to defend, or not, sorry, to not endanger themselves, how should that be taken into account when we're determining whether they have an obligation to go through the official channels, if you will?
So, in conclusion, we do agree with your stance and believe it's very strong, but we also raise these other questions about the different rights people have and how it should be affected, and how, in what scenarios, other scenarios would be justified for people to alert the public of the actions of the government. Thank you.
Thank you, Team 2. Team 1, you now have 1 minute to confer, during which you're permitted to speak. Team 2, you may take notes. And judges, if you'll please do your scoring for Team 2's response to Team 1's presentation during this time. Your minute begins now. Team 1, you'll now have 3 minutes to respond to Team 2's commentary on your initial presentation. Since you only have 3 minutes, I'll give you a verbal time reminder with 1 minute remaining. And your 3 minutes to respond begin now.
So we'd like to thank the other team for their insightful response to our presentation, and we're very appreciative of this opportunity to clarify a couple of points. So first of all, you brought up we just want to clarify that in terms of international issues, we weren't trying to say that nobody could ever be justified in revealing information that has to do with international issues, but just that the qualifications for it are more strict, because the government of the United States has a certain duty to its own citizens, and its duties to citizens of other nations might be lessened. However, if, let's say, the nation was intentionally and directly perpetrating a genocide in another nation by helping to build gas chambers, then that would be something that somebody would be justified in leaking to the public.
Right. Furthermore, our opponents talked about the idea that we said that it's all right for that to happen if a government is grossly failing in its duties to uphold, I guess, societal welfare for the general society. And they asked us about, how we would go about, I guess, preventing one individual who has, I guess, different ideas of what is ethical for the government or what is right for the government going across and just being that one independent individual. So of course it's going to present a problem with whistleblowing because it is one individual who has to do this, but also our opponents didn't look at the flip side, the fact that if an individual goes through all the legal channels and they're told, well, no, this isn't really an issue, and there actually is an issue going on in the government, it's very viable that those legal channels are going to be biased in the way of that government. And so a lot of times that whistleblower could be still justified in going forward and exposing this classified information, even if the legal ways that they talked about would tell them not to, because the government might be doing something grossly wrong and against its duties and against the rights of its citizens. And so at that time, we understand that there's problems with there's problems with just one individual, but we believe that there would be more benefits coming out of this than harms, and so that's why we agree with that.
And this principle of the idea that one individual, even if they take an extreme stance, sort thing is their opinions, even if they're grossly misled, can still contribute to the general social, the debate in public, and so help keep certain beliefs alive so that people are still engaging with ideas and developing conflicting interests.
Really briefly, our opponents also brought up if we would make a distinction between leaks from government employees and leaks from employees employed for private military contracting or something like that. But we would say that ultimately, ethically, it's around the same thing, because the reason why Edward Snowden, who did work for Booz Allen, was giving away these leaks was because he had top secret clearance from the United States government to do so. So because we can see that the government has basically transferred this information to private military contractors, it's ethically the same thing. And so our stance with those. Thank you.
Thank you, Team 1, for your response to Team 2's commentary on your presentation. We will now give the judges time to finish their scoring for your response to the commentary on your presentation. And after that, we'll give the judges a moment to confer with each other regarding the substance and sequence in which they'll ask their questions. And then we'll start the 10-minute question and answer session between Team 1 and the judges. And judges, please keep in mind to keep your questions concise. Judges, are you ready? Okay. Your 10 minutes begin now, and I'll give you a 2-minute time warning.
So congratulations to both teams for making it this far. So I have a question about motivations and contracts for the whistleblowers themselves, right? So we know, given statements that Snowden's made after he leaked this information, that he sought government employment or employment with a contractor specifically so that he could surreptitiously obtain this information and release it to the rest of the world, right? So I'm wondering how that intentional deception when he was entering this contract with the government or with this employer, how that intentional deception should color the way that we interpret this act.
So we thank you for your question first off, and we understand that people like Snowden or other I guess whistleblowers might be tainted by this kind of suspicion, but that's what it is. It's a suspicion that the government is doing something that might be wrong. And so we see that since he didn't release information, that first off, it didn't harm, it didn't, cause gross societal harm like maybe Manning's information did. And since it did, shed light on the suspicions that he had, which were true, then we still believe that this was ethical of him because he was ultimately shedding light on the fact that the government had fulfilled its duties and had infringed upon society.
So instead of applying for some kind of Freedom of Information Act, he went through this kind of surreptitious channel, and that doesn't.
We would agree that it probably would have been preferable for him to pursue a way to find this information, if he suspected it, to find this information in a way that didn't involve deception, but it was top secret, classified information. So if he really believed that there was a gross atrocity that was going on with the government, then he would have testified.
I'm wondering about how there's sort of two things you've put on the table that I'm not clear how they interact. One is you start out saying, well, you think it is ethically justified under some conditions, not all the time. What conditions where there's a gross violation, I think was one of your phrases, on the part of the government in its responsibility to either promote or protect the welfare of the society. And that looked like you were saying, under these circumstances where there's a violation, there's a permission to release the information. Second case, though, is you draw a distinction between cases that cause a lot of damage and those that don't cause a lot of damage. And I'm wondering to what extent you think the damage actually caused affects the permissibility of what was done. So we don't actually know what the damage of Snowden's information is. We don't know, for instance, how much information about technological capacities we have are now public knowledge and greatly weaken our security, for instance. We also don't know what the effect is of destroying the diplomatic silence on the fact that we all spy on each other, which everybody knew apparently. But they now all have to be indignant of it. So I'm wondering how you're weighing the actual consequences against the mere discovery that the government's doing something that's a gross violation of its responsibility.
basically, as you said, we would weigh these two things. And the point of revealing a place where the government is committing a gross atrocity is that they could potentially be they are causing harm in some way. And so the reason that whistleblowing would be justified is to prevent that harm. And as you said, the whistleblowing could potentially cause some harm in itself. So as you mentioned, we would weigh these things, and our goal overall would be to cause the least amount of harm.
Okay, hi. Thank you all for a very compelling presentation. My question invites you all to think about the difference between another point in time where there was a whistleblower long before you were born, Watergate, and now. And some comparisons that come to mind. With Watergate, there was an informant who had inside information, whether it was an employee or not. And it was a clearly egregious allegation of wrongdoing by the highest office holder in this land. And that disclosure didn't really raise questions of an ethical breach by the disclosing party, I don't think. But this one seems to be so different to all of us because we're in this age of technology, which raises a whole host of issues. And I'm really concerned as to why you didn't draw this conclusion, and I need you just to revisit it for me. Why isn't there a duty to act, absolutely duty to act, but not a duty to disclose? In other words, I'm asking you to think again about the questions put to me, put to you, and see if you can revisit this. When you can't really entrust that there's going to be an employee who's going to have that clarity of vision when the information is coming over your computer screen, or when you could get at it, even if you don't see it during your work day, if you can go and find it, you don't really know what it means, then you don't have ethical omniscience about, what's going to happen down the pike if you do think the consequences matter to determine whether it's ethical. Yet you can clearly see all of the problems that can come up when the crazy person with the weird motivations pops up and hacks into Susie's system and thinks that he's seeing the apocalypse, and before you know it, good golly, what do I as the employer do? I'm training people on their ethical and legal obligations. I'm an employment attorney. What is a your ethical obligation, sir, is? What do you do? So why don't you stop short of that chaotic scene I'm envisioning and say, we're not in that old era anymore where John really knows what John's talking about in John's deep throat. Now we're in a different era. And given all that uncertainty, gosh, you've got to act. Why do you go that distance? Tell me again, and if you can, why you go that distance? Why not just say act?
The thing is, you talk about this age being filled with more uncertainty, and it's impossible now to know the consequences of what one action may be, because perhaps there are some technological differences. And we still feel that it's possible for contractors, when they act, going by certain rules of reason, just because something is so complicated doesn't mean we suddenly say that humans are no longer able to make a rational decision about something. Just because, for example, if there was someone that felt that, or they found out information about someone being killed, but it was being done in an extremely complicated manner, and they didn't understand how exactly this person was being killed, and then suddenly you're saying that it's not permissible for this person to reveal this, even if they have some sort of gut instinct, just because they don't understand it all. It seems to imply that humans are
2 minutes.
incapable of making a reasonable decision, and that we shouldn't trust these valuable humans with making such.
And so, just really quickly, we acknowledge that with the age that we're living in, this age of technology, this age of more interconnectivity with other countries because of globalization, things are going to be more uncertain. There might be, unintended consequences that we don't necessarily see, but we still see that with whistleblowing and with the idea of what we've seen in the past, if it's kind of upheld under the caveats that we presented, we believe that, somebody, exposing something something that the government's doing wrong, something that's like the government's doing against its own people, is ultimately it's good for the people because we need to have that level of trust in government to know that they're doing something right. And if they're not doing something right, then we need to know that they're doing something against the general, I guess, societal whatever, against their duties.
And additionally, the president team brought up the situation of if you saw somebody was shot and you think that the government is assassinating people when in reality it was in self-defense, and you announce that to the public, and it comes into the public light, and then the public begins to demand the truth, and if the government is truly doing something benign, then the government can clarify that, and when this information, even if the person who's revealing it does not know all of the information about it, it brings it into the public sphere so that the public can look at it from many different points of view with a lot more information.
So, I'm wondering about the significance in your eyes then of the condition that the government has done something egregiously wrong. So originally the setup was, if they're doing something egregiously wrong, then we're morally justified in leaking. But you've just given an argument that sounds like a defense of WikiLeaks. That is, let everything go out in the open air, in the sunlight, and we'll work out and find the truth, and that's what we need for trust. So,
Don't feel obligated to answer that. Because we are out of time for this half of the match. Thank you, judges and team 1 and 2 for the discussion we had regarding this case. Maggie will come around and collect your scrap paper while the judges finish their scoring for the response to the questions. Team 2 will be presenting initially. Team 1 will respond, and then Team 2 will respond to your commentary. And the question and case that Team 2 will be answering in their presentation for case number 15, Trayvon Martin and the use of lethal force. The question that Team 2 will be answering is, under what conditions is self-defense justified? Under what conditions is self-defense justified? Team 2, you'll have 2 minutes to confer, during which you're permitted to speak. Team 1, you can take notes during this time, and your 2 minutes begin now. Team 2 will now have 5 minutes to present on case number 15, Trayvon Martin and the use of lethal force. Would you like any time reminders? Okay, I'll give you verbal reminders at 3 minutes and 1 minute, and your 5 minutes to present begin now.
We'd like to thank the judges for being here today and got their round and the team for being here as well. So the question we've been given is under what conditions is self-defense justified? So we basically have 3 conditions. That you're not a belligerent in the conflict that's causing you to use force, and that you didn't walk up to somebody, punch them, and then pull out a gun when they try to fight back. Another one is that you can't retreat, so we're saying that there is a duty to retreat. And the last ethical issue is that it's only if you are in imminent danger. So it wouldn't include if you see somebody on the street trying to be a hero and pulling out a gun. And we can explain, we will go on to explain why we have each of these criteria. So getting into the ethical issues, the 2 ones we're focusing on are the right to protect, or the right to bodily integrity of the person who's using force, and the right to bodily integrity of the potential assailant. So we think that both of these rights, it's very clear that people have them. So the question is, how in each of these scenarios, what criteria can we choose to ensure that these rights are best protected given the actions that are ongoing? So in the case of you didn't provoke a fight, the reason why we need this based on these ethical issues, simply because if you walk up to somebody, start a fight with them, and then pull out a gun and shoot them, it seems clear that you egregiously violated that person's rights to bodily integrity for whatever reason you want to, basically. It seems profoundly unjust. And the other issue is that you can't retreat. We're saying there is a duty to retreat, basically, because it has the highest probability of maximizing, or it has the best chance of maximizing life, basically. If I see somebody, I don't know, with a knife 100 feet away, if I see somebody with a knife 100 feet away, there's really no compelling reason for me to shoot them because they're not posing an imminent danger to me. And so by uncertainty that maybe I'm shooting somebody who's just holding a knife for whatever reason. And I also protect myself. So that's why we think there's a duty to retreat. The other case is only in defense of self. So a problem with people running around basically and pulling guns whenever they think that someone's in danger and trying to be cops. The issue is that people have a tendency, so if I walk into a room and I see someone pointing a gun at someone, and I shoot that person, a significant portion of the time it will turn out that I've just shot a cop who was arresting someone or something along those lines. Like, there's inherent uncertainty in putting ourselves into other situations makes it really inadvisable to do this.
Well, one possible objection is that if the person, if you're acting in self-defense, aren't you harming the bodily integrity of the person who provoked this action? But in response, we say that if you provoke this sort of fight, then you're almost suspending your right to bodily integrity because, like as wrestlers going into a match, for momentarily, they suspend their right to bodily integrity and allow each other to punch and hit each other. No. So that would be a scenario that would be applicable to our stance.
Another objection is that you should never harm anybody in any circumstance. But in this situation, someone is trying to violate your right to bodily integrity, and if you have no other alternative, you need to seize your right to bodily integrity by defending yourself.
So some other potential objections would be that there isn't a duty to retreat. The reason we have the duty to retreat really is because we do want to maximize the probability of both people living. Because if someone lives, they can go to trial, they can maybe explain what was happening, and it may, like there's a, right to the trial basically. They have the right to defend themselves and present potentially exculpating evidence. And obviously also there's the fact that they're alive, that is pretty important. So that's why we think that there is a duty to retreat. Other potential objections could be that if you provoke a fight, you should have the right to use it. Once again, by provoking a fight, you've waived to a significant extent your rights to bodily integrity. And so, in conclusion, we believe that.
So in conclusion, we have 3 points that we want to point out when self-defense is justified. The person in question cannot have provoked the fight, and they should retreat when possible. And lastly, they should be using self-defense to defend themselves, only in defense of themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Team 2. Team 1 will now have 1 minute to confer, during which you're permitted to speak. Team 2, you can pass notes during this time. And judges, you can work on your scoring for Team 2's initial presentation. And your minute begins now. Team 1, you'll now have 5 minutes to comment on Team 2's initial presentation. Would you like any time reminders?
Yes, please. One at 3 minutes and one at 1 minute.
Okay, I'll give you the 3 minute and 1 minute time reminders, and your 5 minutes begin now.
So we'd like to thank the other team for their insightful argument and also the judges for being here. So when the other team was examining this question, under what conditions is self-defense justified, they focused mainly on a physical fight, and that is reasonable considering the case. However, one question that we would have is, could self-defense be justified as being verbal in some cases? So I know that sounds trivial, but if you were having a verbal fight with somebody and you responded verbally, harshly perhaps, would you be justified in doing that? And then also, you talked about not being belligerent in the conflict. So what we would wonder is, if you started a verbal conflict by insulting somebody or something along those lines, and they escalated it to a physical level by punching you, would you be justified in then using self-defense despite the fact that you were technically belligerent in that conflict?
Also, in addition to kind of just go further into both of those points, first off, how do you exactly quantify like what kind of self-defense could be used in a situation? So our opponents talked a lot about like, oh, if somebody punches me and I take out a gun, like, so how are we going to quantify that? Like, is it okay for somebody to, call me something bad and then I take out a gun and shoot them? Or like, where are we drawing offensive, I don't mean to be offensive, but the person maybe even is unstable in a way, and they take it in an offensive way, and they escalate the conflict. In that situation, does your stance change? Do we see maybe that person having
3 minutes
still,
remaining.
thank you, having a right to having self-defense even though they provoked the fight, they were belligerent even though they didn't mean to?
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the concept of the duty to retreat in every situation. This was the second point you brought up in your conditions for self-defense. So I take it then in the United States, I can carry a concealed weapon sometimes in certain states. So so leaving this point aside and going to another point you mentioned, I'll show how these are connected, that you said that a person cannot carry out vigilante justice because they can never know the full situation. So if I'm in a situation and I'm in a state where there are concealed gun laws and the other person has a concealed weapon, do I still have a duty to retreat if they potentially could cause harm to me? Because it seems to me that I'm not aware of this situation, which is one of the primary reasons you would not want someone to intervene. But at the same time, can I reasonably retreat in this case because there might be a danger to my life, and there are factors such as mental instability in which we would want to consider in such a case. So that's just one point that we'd like some clarification on.
Right, and I would also like my opponents to quantify the degree of self-defense that an individual is allowed to take. So, for example, if another person came up to me and stole $20 from me, would I be justified in shooting them? Should I retreat, or what should I do? Because neither of the 3 caveats that you guys mentioned cover the scenario. So I would ask you to quantify that.
Right. So in conclusion, we would really like to see our opponents address quantify what kind of self-defense to be taken, whether there's a line in certain kinds of self-defense. Also talk more about the verbal side of things instead of just
1
physical
minute.
fights. Thank you. And also talk about the fact that there are 3 caveats. Also kind of address maybe unintentional provocation of a fight and how that would potentially change the situation. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
see the rest of it.
Thank you, Team 1. Team 2, you'll now have 1 minute to confer prior to your 3-minute response. You're permitted to speak. Team 1, you can take notes, and judges, you can work on your scoring for Team 1's response to Team 2's presentation. Your minute begins now. Team 2, you'll now have 3 minutes to respond to Team 1's commentary on your initial presentation. Because of this, you'll have 1 time reminder with 1 minute remaining. And your 3 minutes begin now.
So we would like to address some of the issues brought up in the rebuttal. So the first issue is whether a verbal confrontation can be grounds to shoot somebody or to escalate into a physical fight. This is really easy. No. If someone's yelling profanity at you, yell right back, but don't escalate into physical violence. And the rationale for that is, it seems self-explanatory. So I guess that's a good segue to the next question. We really did focus on lethal force in self-defense simply because that's often the most contentious issue. But you should use the force that's necessary to protect yourself if self-defense is justified. So if somebody is poking you, maybe don't shoot them, but maybe push their head away. If someone's if someone's hitting you and you don't think that your life is in imminent danger, but you do need to protect yourself, it may be advisable for you to just, fist fight instead of, once again, pulling out a gun and shooting somebody. You should generally avoid killing people if that's possible.
But can be used as a
Yeah,
last resort.
obviously, yeah, it's a last resort. I guess this brings us to the next point, the unintentional fight. If someone's insane and they get mad at you for looking at them the wrong way and for stepping on their shoes or something like that, once again, it seems really like insane people do insane things. It's an entirely separate issue. I mean, if they're physically attacking you, they're physically attacking you. It's very easy.
I would like to address Wen Tao situation of what would be the difference in lethal force used if somebody came and stole $20 from me and ran away, or if someone came and stole, let's say, $100 from me and ran away. But in this situation, we don't think it is justified to use lethal force because the assailant has already taken the money and has ran away, and they aren't
it's not like shooting them is the only way in the world you'll ever get the money
1
back.
minute remains.
You could report them to the police if you
And,
wish.
yeah. I guess moving off of that, another point that was brought up was the duty to retreat in the context of concealed weapons. So if somebody doesn't, if you don't know that somebody has a gun, it's unclear whether they have a gun or not. They haven't pulled the gun then. So there's no imminent threat to you. If they're just standing there and you're like, huh, do they have a gun? Should I shoot them or should I not? You probably shouldn't shoot them because they're not posing an imminent threat. You should instead, if you think that they look suspicious, you should retreat. And you know, if you want to keep an eye on them or like, I really don't know what else to say. You shouldn't shoot somebody who's just standing there if you don't know that they pose a threat to you. That seems really easy.
Very trivial situation.
So in conclusion, we hope that we've clarified some of your questions.
Thank you, Team 2, for your response to Team 1's commentary on his presentation. Judges, if you'll finish your scores for Team 2's response to commentary and then confer for a moment regarding your questions, and then we'll begin the 10-minute question and answer session between the judges and Team 2 regarding case number 15. Okay, we'll begin the 10 minutes between Team 2 and the judges now, and I'll give you a 2-minute warning for when we need to wrap it up.
So I was actually working for a Florida member of the House of Representatives when this legislation was being drafted. And one of the concerns that came up during it was whether or not how people felt as though they fit into this sort of criteria that you set up. So suppose I'm sitting in my front lawn and there's someone across the street and I don't feel as though there's anywhere I could go. I don't know that he isn't armed, but because we're in Florida and I kind of have to assume now that everybody can have a concealed weapon, perhaps I assume that perhaps I'm in imminent danger, right? If I feel as though I've met your criteria, I've not been a belligerent in this case, I don't feel as though I can go anywhere, I do actually think that I'm in imminent danger, but I don't know, I can't get in the head of this other person. Am I justified then, and have I met your criteria? Am I justified in doing that?
So the criteria that's used like legally, I believe, it's not necessarily just how you feel, it's how like, and this is a really vague statement, but it's how like a reasonable person would feel in your situation. So if you're a schizophrenic and you're consistently paranoid that everybody's coming to get you, probably a reasonable person would not agree. But if the person's like standing there and they're just standing there, they're not necessarily doing anything to imply that they are either attacking you or that they have a weapon or anything like that, you would say that you're not justified in shooting them. And if they were, and you thought if they had like a knife, say, and they're like 50 feet away, if you're on your front porch, odds are you can get inside the house, and that in and of itself has great potential to diffuse the situation and to result in both people living.
So I want to follow up on a question they raised in the commentary, which, you know, the official question says nothing about shooting, nothing about guns. And I'm wondering whether you think in general self-defense is such that you justifiably engage in it only when what you'd be defending yourself against you didn't help to provoke, and only when you can't retreat. Or are there times when maybe you didn't provoke it and you could retreat, but you're justified in, to use the phrase from the floor of the legislation, but remember we're not talking about guns, where you can stand your ground. So that if people are, you know, attacking you with rumors, or are pushing you out of a job, or are, you know, muscling in on your business, are you not allowed to defend yourself if you can retreat? Or are you allowed to?
Can we make a clarifying?
Please.
Is that physically defend yourself, or through other means?
Well, you've been in a lot of fights, haven't you? I mean, I mean both. I wanted to start at one extreme we're all familiar with, where people are attacking you, not physically.
All right.
You know, they're attacking your integrity. They're spreading rumors about you, and then move to, so somebody's physically attacking you, shoves you off of a seat or off of the bus. Are you justified in standing your ground there?
Right, so you could confer.
Yeah.
So it's a regular thing.
In this case where someone's trying to attack your integrity or muscle you out of your business, we don't believe the same situation applies because they're not attacking your bodily integrity and you can take legal action. So there's no situation in which you would take physical action against these people.
I agree, but I meant to have a case where you were still defending yourself. And I'm asking, do you think self-defense there is justified and you don't have to
In the
retreat?
case of like verbal self-defense,
Yes.
go nuts, scream
Well-
profanities from the rafters. Not actually, but
And you can also take legal action
Yeah,
in certain situations.
Which is self-defense,
Yes.
presumably.
yeah. But in the case where it's like the line between what constitutes physical aggression and verbal aggression gets more blurred, like someone pushing you on a bus, you probably shouldn't turn around and slug them if they've just pushed you a little bit. But you know, if you want to say like, why would you do that? Why did you do that? And there's such a continuum there that it's hard to say exactly what should be done, but be proportional is, I guess, the best guidance that you can really, the best ethical guidance in these situations.
So that was what I was thinking might be on the table implicitly, is the
Yeah.
proportion. You don't have to retreat if you can have a proportional response.
Right, so if it's like a physical altercation, at the end of the day, it's still better if we have less people getting hurt. So we think the duty to retreat still would apply to a really large extent in like physical confrontations. If somebody just bumps you, you know, like accidentally or something like that, it wouldn't really apply. And in cases of like verbal or slander or something like that, again, there really is no duty to retreat because we're not trying to preserve people's reputations. That's not something we necessarily.
I'm just a little bit worried that you create an incentive structure in which people who are willing to push other people around will push them around, and things will get worse. Whereas if people stand their ground on certain issues, will physically chain themselves to a fence and not let themselves be removed, rather than retreat. That may be an important proportional response to a kind of aggression that you seem to be ruling out.
So I guess with retreating, the rationale for it may not apply in some of the more mild, like physical cases. But broadly speaking, we think that in cases where someone can get like seriously injured, there is or even moderately injured, there is a duty to retreat.
Hi. I just want to go back to the example that prompted the question and just, offer another example that came along since then, because these aren't isolated incidents and they're not just Florida. And a case that's been given a lot of publicity since involves a young man who was shot dead in a parked vehicle. The music in his car was loud. He was African American, as were the other passengers. The fellow in the adjacent car, white, grown man, apparently felt threatened, and I haven't read any legal proceedings to note his own testimony in this, but it's communicated in media reports that he felt threatened by
2
them.
minutes.
Okay, so my question is to ask you all to take your analysis here back to the example and and the one that I just gave you in broad brushstrokes, and ask you to tell me in the example with the facts that you've given how you apply your test back. Was that to Trayvon Martin?
Okay, to this example or the car one?
Let's go with Trayvon.
Okay. So maybe for
I have a quick follow-up to this, I'm saving follow-up.
we accept Zimmerman's version of events, and we exclude the possibility that he's lying, which seems certainly plausible. We think that it would be justified. He was definitely kind of like acting really unethically for operating under the assumption that just because Martin was black, that he was responsible for the burglaries in the neighborhood. But if we accept Zimmerman's event or version of what happened, in the sense that in his version, Martin was the one who escalated it to physical violence. It seems likely though that Zimmerman could have retreated and that he had a car nearby. But once again, this is just a question of the actual details of the case, and I can't speak to them. If he could retreat, he definitely should have. If he couldn't have, then he was justified in his telling of the events. He was justified in what he did.
Okay, thank you judges and team 2 for that conversation on game 15. The round is now over, and if Maggie will come around and collect your cases and scrap paper while the judges finish their scores. And judges, just let me know when you're ready to report the results of the round.
Have the moderator recheck, and I want to congratulate both East Chapel Hill High School Team A and Team B. So, let me say that second place goes to, well, of course, East Chapel Hill High, but Team B. They're all and that means that first place goes to East Chapel Hill Team A. Thank you very much. And honor to
With your float.
anything you'd like. So, thank you all again. It was interesting. I didn't know that the scores, the scores were one judge had them tied, and then the other two judges had them winning by 1 or 2. So
Very close.
very, very close. So, as you might imagine, right? So thank you very much, and I